Today we're going to go over death benefit and death benefit for beneficiaries. And then we're also going to touch a little bit on using insurance for wealth management and growth. Okay. We're going to go over the mechanics a little bit and whatnot. So let's see, we're going to click into this here. Hey, look, it's me. Okay, so first is how to get the money, right? You have a death in the family. It's really sad, and I'm sorry about that. And I don't mean to be crass or anything like that, but how do we get the money from our policies, our life insurance policies? So you, the client, and your agent, okay, you have to make the claim. If you are the beneficiary and you don't know that you're the beneficiary and nobody finds that insurance policy, guess what? The insurance carrier is never going to pay out because the claim doesn't get made, and the agent doesn't get notified when a client dies. Like not on a life insurance policy, right? We do get notified in the sense for like auto and homeowners, but not really, because I've seen some people pass away and their auto insurance continues for another year or 2 years, and it just keeps getting deducted out of their bank account or charged to their credit card, and that happens. Okay, so you've got to make the claim. You must provide proof of identity as the beneficiary, state issued ID, passport. Those are usually the two best ones. A certificate of death must be sent in with the claim or shortly thereafter. Now, certificate of death can take some time to get, right? In a lot of cases, if there's ever an investigation into how the person died, that could take an extremely large amount of time. But one thing you want to make sure to do with the certificate of death is to get at least 10 copies. Okay. And I'm not talking go Xerox it in your home office. You need certified from the ME, from the coroner, from the state, certified copies of death certificate, because you have to send out an original for every life insurance policy. You have to send out an original with all the end of life stuff, and everybody needs, like, whenever you submit all of the things for the the bank, when if your spouse dies, you've got to go to the bank to have them removed from your mortgages, from your bank accounts, or to gain access to their bank accounts. The bank needs that original certificate of death. Okay, so get at least 10, maybe even 15, maybe 20, as many as you think that you're possibly going to need, depending on the person that passed away.
Question here.
What's that, Julie?
Does the beneficiary have to know the policy number or like a copy, or is a name is sufficient?
So you're going to have to. So you're going to have to know. You're going to have to know the agent or the carrier. You're going to have to know their name. You're going to have to know all of their personal information, date of birth, social security number, that kind of stuff, so that they can find the policy, right? Like I can't go and say, hey, my client might have a life insurance policy with your company. I can't go and send out blanket policy claims to, I work with 50 different life insurance carriers. It doesn't work.
So a name and social security number and date of birth of insured, that will be enough to find the policy?
What you should do is you should have a file. And in that file,
absolutely,
you're going to have, that's what needs to happen is you need to make it as easy as possible for either you as the beneficiary or for your beneficiaries right? Because, that's one of the things that we do as real estate investors, as investors, as people, is we want to set up the people that we're passing our legacy on to. We want to set them up for success, right?
Yeah.
And so
sounds good.
it's best to have a copy of your policy, or at least the policy numbers, and all of that pertinent information in a file, right?
Yeah.
Every single claim on a death benefit gets investigated by the insurance carrier, right? So it happens on every single one of them. They're never not going to investigate it. That investigation, we'll hit on it in just a minute, can take anywhere from 2 days to 6 months, right? So some of these policies can take a long time to pay out. After that investigation happens, the check will be sent out one of two ways, right? And this is up to whoever sets up the policy, but it's also some insurance agents. Okay, so the two ways is, one, the check gets sent to the agent in the name of the beneficiary. The other way is the check gets sent directly to the beneficiary, okay? Some agents like to have the check sent to them because they like to hand deliver the death benefit check to their client. And, then they, at that time, we're like vultures. We sit down and we have the talk. Okay, now what are you going to do with, this check, right? Because we're vultures, right? I don't like doing that. Agents that do that, I think, are trash. But there are a lot of agents that do that. Okay. The way that I set it up is I always have that check, directed to go to the beneficiary. I know that check is going to go to them, and I hope that I have created a good enough relationship with that client that they're going to know to reach out to me and say, hey, I got this check. I don't know what to do with it. That's kind of part of our jobs, is to do, wealth management and that kind of stuff. Also, you should, depending on the size of the payout, you should talk to a financial advisor as well, right? So, okay, last point on the money is death benefit proceeds are tax exempt. They're tax free, right? But if you take that money, invest it in something, the money that you make off of that investment is not tax-free. We had a client not too long ago get really, really mad at us because she assumed that investment was going to be tax-free. It's not. You owe money on your increase from that investment. You don't owe money on the principal amount, but if you invest that money, you will owe taxes on it, depending on how you invest it. And also on the tax exempt, if you have a life insurance policy that is paid by a corporation, an LLC, a company, if your company buys a life insurance policy on you, the proceeds from that policy are not tax exempt because you used your company to write off the premium that you paid for that life insurance policy. And so you will owe, or your beneficiaries will owe, taxes on the death benefit of that policy. There are a couple workarounds on that. There's some ways to set it up so that you can write it off and it's also tax-free, but that's a much larger play. And it's something that you've got to work with a very knowledgeable agent to be able to set up. Basics are, if your corporation pays for your policy, it is not tax-free. Okay. Timeline on the death benefit. Death certificates can take anywhere from 2 days to 3 months to get. And if there's an investigation into how you died, it could take 6 months, right? The police are not exactly slow, or not exactly fast. They're not exactly slow. They're not exactly fast. So that's something that can take quite a bit of time. Your agent needs to submit the claim with the needed documentation. Once that happens, the claim will get processed. Carrier investigations can take 2 to 6 months. And then, but, you know, statistically, like it says, 90% of all death benefit claims are finalized within 1 month, right? So, but don't count on getting paid sooner than 30 days, right? That's pretty quick in a death benefit scenario.
Just wondering, statistically, how much percentage of death benefit are not claimed?
Ooh, I don't have that number right now, but I know that it's fairly substantial.
Oh, wow.
And then there's also another bit about term life insurance versus whole life insurance as to how much gets paid out. So, and we'll go over that in just a minute. So the money gets paid out as either a lump sum, or you can set it up to pay out as a monthly or annual annuity. And so there's the 2/3 ways to get that money paid out to your beneficiaries. Like I said before, the money gets sent to either the agent or the client. It's entirely dependent on how you, the client, set it up for your beneficiaries. And I recommend making sure that your agent sets it up so that the check goes directly to the beneficiary. Because otherwise you're going to have a vulture sitting there saying, now you've got all this money, what are you going to do? The money is paid out to the beneficiary, meaning that regardless of claims against the life insurance, regardless of the ex-wife who thinks she's entitled to some of the money, or some illegitimate children who think that they're entitled to some of the money, or the cousin who said, Uncle so-and-so said that I get, $1 million when he dies from his life insurance. That doesn't matter. The money goes to the beneficiary. After that, that's when the fight starts, and it can go to court, and you can work through all the probate, or you can settle it between you and your family and that ex-wife. Death benefit proceeds are tax exempt, like I said, but just be careful if you are paying for your life insurance policy through a corporation, which is number 5. Got the money. Now what? The money is completely is to be used completely at the discretion of the beneficiary of the policy. Right? Like I said, the money goes to the beneficiary. You can use it to do whatever you want. You can go buy 10 pounds of cocaine and snort it up your nose. Okay? It's totally up to you. If there are any disputes, comes up in court after the money goes to the beneficiary. Again, it's tax-free, but money made from the investment is not tax-free. One of the ways to settle disputes is, like we talked about, what was it last week with Richard? Set up your trust as the beneficiary, and also having that pour over provision, which he said last week will go to probate, but it's that catch-all, right? So set up the trust as your beneficiaries. The money goes to the trust. The trust gets to decide what happens to it. And then, in the case of having, ex-wives and illegitimate children and all of that, if the trust is set up and you're on top of your will, and, then there's no dispute. Okay, so now I want to hit a little for a minute on prepaid final expense policies. Okay. Prepaid funerals. That's a way that a lot of people like to go. One of the benefits of a prepaid funeral is that, you save 10 to 15% usually on the cost of a funeral by doing a prepaid funeral. And that also alleviates, some of the expenses that can happen to your beneficiaries, to the people that you're leaving behind, right? A final expense policy, also known as a burial policy, also known as a funeral policy. They are policies that you pay for either monthly, annually, or that you can get them in a single payment that you go and you purchase. It's a life insurance policy, is what it's a contract with a life insurance carrier to pay for your funeral when you die, or pay for someone's funeral when they die, right? Where a prepaid funeral, you deal directly with a funeral home. Prepaid or final expense policies, you usually save somewhere between 50 and 80% of the cost of a funeral. The average cost of a funeral right now is just shy of $10,000. It's like $9,700 and change. So they're fairly expensive. Final expense policies, they're super fast to get issued. They can pay out as fast as 3 to 5 days after the death of a loved one. And they cost, if you do a single payment, they're going to cost somewhere in the range of $3,000 to $5,000, and maybe a little bit more depending on the age of the client who's getting it for themselves. But they deal directly with the insurance carrier, and they so that means that you can use any funeral home that your beneficiaries want to. And I feel like there was one other thing that I wanted to say about the funeral policy, but I cannot remember it right now. So, if you guys have questions pop up, please feel free to either ask them here or get
I have a question. What kind of life insurance can seniors get, or is it just too expensive, not worth it?
So no, life insurance for seniors is not too expensive. The average age of somebody getting a final expense policy is over 70. And if they're paying for it monthly, according to, I think it was Northwestern, if they're paying for it monthly, it's somewhere between, like men and women, it's somewhere between $70 and $150 a month for a $10,000 policy for a 70-year-old. Those are approximate numbers. And every policy is different, except for, that was the thing. Final expense policies are simple issue policies, meaning that you do not have to get a medical. In the application, we'll ask you some medical history questions, but that's it. You're not going to have a nurse come out to your house and take your blood pressure and ask you to stand on a scale and do all of those things. So they're quick to issue. And
okay, I'm not asking
almost never do they get denied.
Yeah, I'm not asking final expenses policy. I'm asking a life insurance policy.
And yeah, so for a regular whole life policy, for somebody a little bit older, they are more expensive as far as like your monthly cost. But it's all kind of relative, right? So as a 30-year-old, if I go and get $1 million insurance policy, whole life insurance policy, and I pay into that till the day that till the day that I die at 85 years old, saying that that's when I die, the amount of money that I pay into that policy is going to be somewhat similar to a person who is 70 years old who goes and gets that same policy, right? So over the course of my 55 years of paying into that policy, say for that $1 million, I pay in $600,000. Okay, so for $1 million worth of life insurance, I pay in $600,000, right? That's over the course of my lifetime of 55 years. A 70-year-old that goes and gets that same $1 million in coverage is going to still pay in somewhere close to that $600,000 mark for $1 million of coverage. It's just going to be much shorter of a term, right? So I'm going to start when I'm 70 years old. I'm going to pay into it for 15 years, which means that my monthly premium is going to be a lot higher. But there are also some other, and we're going to talk about one of them here in a second. There's also some other possibilities for older people to buy life insurance with some good death benefit. And if you have, some money that you're wanting to reposition, there's also some really great things that can happen with this. So,
can you talk a little bit about the long-term care? If
yes, so I'm not going to go over long-term care today, but okay. I did a long-term care. One of the things with long-term care is that it's not as common anymore for just a long-term care. Yes, Liz, we can definitely flag that topic. It's not as common for just writing just a policy for long-term care, because almost every life insurance policy from a good carrier, includes a long-term care, a critical illness, and like a dismemberment, chronic illness, disability rider inside of the life insurance policy. So not only does the life insurance policy give you a death benefit, but it also gives you some lifetime, I can't think of the word right now, but it gives you some money that the policy will give you during your lifetime if you have something come up, like needing long-term care, like a major disability or chronic illness, that kind of stuff. So I want to go over modified endowment contracts really, really quick. Julie, I know that I didn't answer all of your questions on that. And if you want to, we can definitely jump into a meeting later this week or sometime, and we can go over some long-term care stuff and life insurance and that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So a modified endowment contract is a life insurance contract, okay? The cool thing about insurance contracts are client meets his obligations of the contract, insurance carrier is going to meet their part of the contract. They're going to follow on what they said that they would do, right? So it's a contract. It's not an investment. It's not a, if this happens, this is going to happen. It's a contract, something that we're going to say, this is going to happen, period. So money left. So what makes a modified endowment contract is that it's usually their single premium, meaning that I'm going to buy a life insurance contract and I'm going to pay once, right? So I'm going to take $100,000 and I'm going to buy a life insurance contract with that $100,000. Okay. I'm going to move that money in right now today. Okay. Money left inside of that policy. Doing that breaks a couple of rules, but there's some really cool things that happen because of it. It breaks a couple of rules that are called TAMRA. It's part of the tax code, and it has to do with how fast you can pay into a life insurance policy. Okay, money left inside of a modified endowment contract will grow at 8% annually in most cases. It is a cash value policy, which means that you can take money out of that policy. If you take money out of that policy, the money that you pay into it day one is available day one. Okay, it'll take a couple weeks to go through all the paperwork and whatever to get the money back, but it's available day one at what's the word? When you pull money out of your Roth before you're 59, it it breaks some rules and fees. There's some fees. I can't remember the word. It doesn't matter. So if you pull your money out of the
unqualified distribution,
that one. Okay. If you pull your money out of the MEC in the first year, it does not break the rules. And so there are no penalties. Thank you, Robert. There's no penalties. So unlike other retirement contracts, you can choose how much and when you want to take the money out in that first year. There are no cap on principal contributions, meaning that unlike your Roth, that you only put, $5,500 in a year or whatever the number is, 6,500. If you want to put in $100,000 a year into your policy, go for it. If you have $1 million, go for it. That's one of the awesome things about life insurance, cash value life insurance policies. You can put as much money into them you want, as long as the policy is set up correctly. And we can modify that policy as time goes to change that amount if need be, right? So if you only want to pay in once, hey, guess what? We're going to set up a policy you only pay in once. Hey, you want to put in $10,000 this year, $50,000 next year, $100,000 the year after that, and then $10,000 a year after that, or whatever. It doesn't matter. We can make that adjustment, and there's no penalties for doing that. And you can do as much as you want. Like life insurance, like all life insurance policies, the principal, like index universal policies, a modified endowment contract is principal protected, meaning that your investment goes up, but it can never go below the floor of 0, right? So it participates in the market gains. It doesn't participate in the market losses. They are tax deferred, which means that it is a last in, first out. When you're alive, that's how it acts. So you pay taxes on the money that you draw out of it while you're alive, which is like an annuity. But when you die, all the money gets transferred. The cash value dissolves, gets transferred into the death benefit, and that goes tax-free to your beneficiaries. Okay. And it offers all the same protections as a standard life insurance policy with accelerated benefits, statutory protections, death benefit, IRS protection, divorce protection, corporate law protection, bankruptcy protection. It has those built into it. So it's a really cool contract. Modified endowment contracts are not new. They've existed for over 100 years. All of the big names use them, including banks. Wells Fargo has $18 billion operating inside of a MEC right now. Chase Bank has them. Fannie Mae, all the banks use these. Billions and billions of dollars go into these every year for these banks. These are the strategies that have kept the wealthy families wealthy forever. They've become more popular over the last 10 to 20 years as more people learn about them, understand them. Books like, is it Be Your Own Bank? By Robert Nash. I think it's Be Your Own Bank. I can't remember the exact name, but Robert Nash wrote a book on them back in the 60s or something like that. Okay, so this is the part about payout. Term life insurance, right? Less than 2% of all term life insurance. Nelson Nash. Thank you, Robert. And I'll answer that question in 1 second. Less than 2% of term life insurance gets paid out on death. Less than 2%. That's because people stop paying their premiums. Those term policies end before the people die. A number of reasons, right? Whereas 84% of cash value life insurance policies pay out. 84%. Okay, huge number. Most insurance brokers avoid working with MECs because they do not understand them. They don't know how to set them up, and so they screw them up. And that's when you hear the horror stories about people's life insurance policies imploding, breaking apart, and having issues, right? So if you're going to employ these strategies, work with someone who knows what they're doing. Or work with someone who may not know what they're doing, but they have a support system of people that do know what they're doing. Okay. If the policies are set up correctly, 84% of them pay out the death benefit, and you can also use the cash while you're alive. In that 16%, that's not just the ones that are imploding, right? 16% of those policies people forget about, and they don't go and claim them when their beneficiary dies. People go through some financial troubles, and they don't get with their agent to adjust their policy so that they end up losing that policy because they went through some issues. Okay. So key takeaways for today: at least 10 copies of the death certificate. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait for extras when you need them. Check out funeral and final expense policies. They're cheap. They're cheap, and you can save a bunch of money on something that you know is going to happen. Everyone needs a funeral. Everyone gets a funeral, right? It's just, how are we going to pay for it? The company that writes your life insurance policies matter. Okay. Some companies, B-rated companies, don't go with them because there's something in that, like we were talking about earlier with Chris and the fire. If it's caused by this reason, we're not going to pay out, right? Life insurance is similar, right? Some of the B-rated carriers, if the client commits suicide, they will not pay out the life insurance policy. I'm pretty sure it's over 90% of A-rated carriers. If you commit suicide, they pay out.
I assume that's after a period of time, Aaron?
So yes and no. Some carriers, day one, they will pay out. Some carriers make you wait until the end of the take back period, which on average is around 2 years. I also wrote a policy the other day that was, if you committed suicide in the first 90 days, they wouldn't pay out, but after 90 days, they would pay out. With MEX,
I think it is 2 years.
Oh, sorry.
So I have a policy. Sorry, I have a policy which has 2 years for if any, this occurs.
Yes. Yeah. So they do exist. 2 years is pretty common. But you can also find policies that it's day one. You can find them that it's day zero or 90, or with a B-rated carrier, a lot of them say if the client passes away because of suicide, they will not pay out. And there's even writers out there that say if the client dies in the act of breaking the law, they will not pay out. Right. So just, that's something to look at. Right. I mean, I know that you guys are all on the up and up. And so that's not something that you need to worry about, breaking the law, but that's there. MEX are a play to reposition assets to create extra leverage, right? They aren't a end all be all investment. I don't think any investment is, right? It's all about, hey, how can I combine multiple strategies together to create the best play for myself? MEX avoid margin calls that are typical with other investment accounts. 85 to 90% of the premium paid in on day one is available the following day, right? There are some rules around if you're under 59 years old, there are some rules, some penalties that can come into play if you take withdrawals after the first year. Anything done in the first year, there's no penalties, right? So first year we play with it, you're 2 through 9, 2 through 10, we leave it alone. And then anything after that, 2 through however 59 years old. They're principal protected contracts. They have statutory protection, and they're just a way to create extra arbitrage. So, and that's my whole spiel for today.